Ago, the Omaha City Council passed an affordable housing plan on a 5-2 vote. The proposal is aimed at addressing the 55,000 households in the metro which spend more than 30% of their income just on housing. The vote comes after hours of debate in last week's meeting, which pushed the decision to today's meeting. 4 amendments to the plan were presented today, but none of them passed. Amy Melton of District 7 says not approving the amendments is counterproductive to fixing the issue.
We literally had the planning department admit we weren't suggesting rent control, yet this council just voted to keep the rent control language in there.
Councilman Vinny Palermo, who voted to approve the plan, said it's important to note that the proposal is a draft and none of the elements in it are set in stone. The council needed to approve a plan by the end of the year under a new state law.